Hi there, my name is Chris Jagazia, and I'm the CEO of Off to Class, and I'm very happy to welcome Miss Lisa McManus, who is a senior recruiter with Houston Independent School District. Lisa is going to be delivering us a workshop focused around resume and cover letter writing. I was actually able to catch a similar presentation held by Lisa's colleague, Dr. Alejandro, at this year's NABE conference in NYC. And when I saw Dr. Alejandro's presentation, I was really impressed with the presentation because it was super practical and it really spoke to teachers and how to market yourself, which is obviously a really, really important muscle in our brain that we all want to be exercising, periodically at all times. I also thought that it would be super informative and perfect for our community of ESL teachers that might be thinking about their skill set and how they can apply their skill set into a district teaching position. Lately, there's been a huge trend in ed tech for companies like Off to Class to promote their own opportunities within their companies to classroom teachers. And from my perspective as CEO of Off to Class, I think it's really important that teachers that have the skills to work with English language learners explore the opportunities to work with students that need their skills most. So, on that point, I'd like to pass it over to Lisa.
Thank you, Chris. All right, let's get started. I appreciate Chris for that introduction. Again, my name is Lisa McManus. I am a senior recruiter. I'm very happy to talk with you today about resume and cover letter writing, as well as give you some interview tips. This is a great time to be attending this presentation as we are getting into the heat of hiring season in our school districts. So, not long ago, I was in your shoes. I was a bilingual educator, later secondary math educator, and I worked my way through administration, and I was a principal for 6 years. So now, as a recruiter, between my administrative work and my recruiting work, I have reviewed thousands of resumes and talked with hundreds of candidates. And so I'm very happy to present some skills for you today. So I'm going to take us through a presentation. I'm going to introduce you to my team, although they're not with me, but I want you to see some faces from HISD. And then we're going to talk about the resume and your cover letter, some structural and content components. And then I'm going to go over some interview tips and give you some guiding questions, and also some questions that as a principal, I asked aspiring teachers. So here's my team in the Houston Independent School District. We're led by two senior managers, Diana Lum and Dr. Alejandro Gonzalez. We are a group of 6 recruiters, Adam Hare, Rod Trevino, Tom Day, and Philip Sternagel. We travel all over the country and sometimes abroad to recruit fantastic teachers like yourself. And Chantel Black is our amazing HR business rep, and she helps us with all administrative tasks. So just a little plug for HISD. We are recruiting. So if you are looking for a position, we have sign-on bonuses up to $5,000. We also have critical shortage, including for ESL, up to $5,000. So in case you're interested in a position, feel free to reach out to any of us, and our contact information is on our HISD website. All right, so let's get down to why you're really here. Let's talk about the resume. So the purpose of the resume is to provide a snapshot of yourself. So as a principal, I would have 50 to 100 candidates apply for a single job. And clearly, I did not have enough time to interview every single candidate. So my team and I would scan resumes to determine if we could figure out who was most likely to be the best fit. So on your resume, you really want to highlight your skills, your abilities, and your accomplishments. The goal of your resume is to get noticed. You want to get to that second step, which is the interview. So let's review the structure and format of your resume. Again, you want to market yourself. The goal is, again, to get an interview. So your resume is going to detail your education, your experiences, and your skills. You want to list your achievements and results. So it's very important that you show the impact of your work on your resume, so that hiring managers and principals know not only what you did, but what impact it had on student outcomes and on the school community. So, as you're preparing your resume, think about these reflection questions. Who are you and how do you want to be perceived? So, what are you going to include on your resume? How will you include it? And where will you include it? And these questions pertain to the different sections of the resume that I'm going to review with you. So a typical resume has these sections. So you're going to want to ensure that you provide contact information. You want to provide active contact information that you check regularly. So this is going to be your email address and your phone number. You also want to ensure that your email address is professional. So I have green eyes, but I'm not going to use the alias green eyed gal. I'm going to use some variation of my name, initials, something that's going to be perceived as more professional. Education, you want to make sure that you're listing your universities and your degrees, followed by your certification areas. And so when you're applying for a teaching position, principals need to know in which area you are certified because they have to match your certification area with an opening on their campus. Experience, this is going to be the bulk of your resume. You want to make sure that you are listing your experience in reverse chronological order. So that means starting with the most recent and then going back to the oldest position that you held. So you're going to detail, and I'm going to take you through some examples of what you did and the impact that it had on student outcomes. Relevant experience, this is another section, again, related to your work history. And so this is going to cover jobs that weren't necessarily specific to teaching. So you may have served as a lifeguard, you may have served as a swim instructor, you may have worked in a restaurant or a grocery store or bank. There are so many ways that you can tie the skills and knowledge that you gain from those positions to teaching. So then you're going to present your skills and interests. And this section is very important because this section can give you an edge over candidates. And so your skills, you might be a whiz at Excel. Well, that is very relevant in schools because we do a lot of data tracking. You might be very interested in other cultures and be fluent or proficient in Spanish, French, Arabic, Mandarin, or another language. Even if you're not certified in those areas, it is very important to list them because it just shows what a better communicator you are. You have enhanced communication skills, and you may be able to reach a population in the school community that other teachers can't. So here's a snapshot of a chronological resume. So we have the contact and education sections at the top, followed by the professional experience, which again is in reverse chronological order, starting from the most recent, going to the oldest, and then followed by professional skills. So when you look at it, you see a very clear, clean, polished resume. So that's how a resume should look. It should be very easy for hiring managers, principals, and recruiters to read. And really what we're doing is we're scanning and looking for keywords and results. All right, so let's zoom in a little bit. So here's Hattie M. White. Okay, very plain, or the format is very plain, right? You can read it very easily. And so this person included their address. It's up to you if you'd like to include your physical address or not. It's not required these days, but you certainly want to include your phone number and your email address. Remember to use contact information that you check regularly. When I was interviewing for a position, I had emailed out several interview appointment times, and I did have a teacher not check her email, and she had emailed me several days after I had filled the position, and she was inquiring to see if it was still open, and unfortunately it was not. So make sure that you are checking your email address regularly. You want it to be a personal but professional email address. If you use your current workplace address and you change jobs, you're going to lose access to that email address, right? So you want to make sure that you have a personal email address, but again, keep it professional. And ensure your voicemail greeting on your phone number is also professional. So here is education. I actually took this off my resume for you. So I have my university bolded, University of Notre Dame, its location, Notre Dame, Indiana. I majored in Bachelor of Business Administration, and I have my honors of summa cum laude there, followed by my majors. I also included my study abroad experience in Toledo, Spain. So why is all of this important? So principals need to know where you went to school and what you majored in. That's going to show your initial interest, right, when you were going to school. It's important to include your honors or your distinctions because that's a testament to your hard work, dedication, and commitment to learning. And as a teacher, that's what we want to demonstrate for our students. And including examples of study abroad experience or other affiliations or other experiences there also shows that you went above and beyond the traditional learning experience. And so I was a bilingual teacher. That was my first job in education. And I wanted to highlight that I was very committed to learning the Spanish language and that I spent 6 months abroad in Spain trying to learn the second language. So here's an example of a certification area. So I'm certified in from the Texas State Board for Educator Certification, and I've listed my teaching certifications here. So you see that I have the teacher, I have standard certification, I'm an EC through 4 bilingual generalist, and I've listed the date of expiration. So my cert is valid until June 2028. This is important for principals to know because we cross state lines quite frequently. And in the state of Texas, we are often issued a 1-year permit. So a principal needs to know how long you're going to be certified for. And if your certification is going to be up for expiration soon, what's your plan to renew it or to take the appropriate test so that you can continue working in that role? All right, here's an example of, a non-example really, of how to list experience on the resume. So remember, we're starting in reverse chronological order. So this is going to be the person's first job description at Chavez High School as an 11th grade U.S. history teacher. So note the dates, August 2020 to present. So if you're still working in that role, listing present as the end date, so to speak, is okay. That lets them know that you are still employed. And the bullet points listed, those are quality responsibilities, right? Implemented primary resource literacy circles and developing a peer review grading system and collaborating with the ELA team. Those are all important responsibilities. What is missing from these bullet points is the impact on student learning. Principals want to know what you did and what was the impact, because I want to know what you're going to bring to my campus and what impact you're going to have on my students and community. So let's see how we can improve these bullet points to give a little bit more information and detail about the impact this person had on their school. You see that we have lengthened the bullet point to include data. So if you are in a student teaching role or a teaching role or and really working in any capacity, if you really reflect on what you've done, I'm sure that you can find some data in your work. And so this teacher, those primary resource literacy circles, they actually resulted in 90% of the students meeting the class goal of 80% mastery on the statewide STAR assessment. So STAR is our Texas state assessment that students have to pass to move on to the next grade level. So as a principal, gives me kind of a wow factor because 90% is a very high number of students meeting standard. The second bullet point, we've added that the peer review grading system, designing the peer review grading system helps students with 70% of students scoring at or above the national average. And so that system, I'm sure there was a rubric involved, or these are the things that as a principal, I could ask the candidate, how did you do that? How did you improve your percentage? Or I can ask, what was the baseline, right? How did you get 70% of students scoring at or above the national average? The final bullet point, collaborating with the ELA team, we would increase the persuasive writing practice into the U.S. history curriculum, which actually impacted the test results in English too. Not my course, right, or not this teacher's course, but actually in their colleagues' course by 13%. So that shows the principal that this person is really apt for collaborating and is pro-student across the content areas, not only their content area of U.S. history. So other related experience, again, this is a very vital and relevant section. And so we add data to these bullet points as well. So as a summer camp instructor at the YMCA, this person planned and coordinated camp events for a diverse group of 183 children in 16 countries and 7 languages. This tells the principal that this person is very organized and very creative to develop lessons for 183 students. That's a lot of students. That's a lot of students to manage, to know, to get to know their interests, to design activities that are going to keep them engaged. And then working with students who are representing 16 countries and 7 languages also speaks to the interest and diversity of this teaching candidate. As a swim instructor, designing and implementing weekly swim lessons for 52 children via one-on-one and small group lessons, this is talking about differentiation, because if you have a group of 6 7-year-olds versus 1 7-year-old, your safety practices are going to be quite different, because you're going to be monitoring in the swimming pool, teaching students or teaching children how to swim. You're going to have to differentiate your strategies so that you can maintain everyone's safety. So you can tie this to education. So here's some examples of additional information, skills, and interests. We discussed putting language on the resume before, including some of your hobbies. Whenever I was hiring, or whenever I am hiring as a recruiter, I'm looking for hobbies and I'm automatically thinking about after-school clubs and sports and other activities. How would this person be able to use their skills and interests to enhance my campus offerings? And then you can also include affiliations and community service. So this shows that you are engaged in community work, which again, as a school, that is what we're all about. All right, so let's just look at the general structure. We've talked about the content, and now we'll review the structure of the resume. So for a resume, you want to keep it to 1 to 2 pages. If you're a newer teacher, you can probably keep it to 1 page. If you're a highly experienced teacher, then you could limit it to 2 pages. There are some standard components or standard structural pieces that I want to discuss. So for the margins, you want it to look very symmetrical. So use the margins of 8/10 to about 1 inch all the way around. So that way you have a clean border around your text. For the font size, make sure that you're using a font size that's very legible. So 12 point is standard, but if you are running out of room and you need to reduce the font size, don't go any smaller than 11. So 11 point is still very readable. The font style, use a plain text. Remember when we looked at those examples, the text was very plain. Times New Roman, Arial, Calibri. There's no need for cursive fonts. It makes it difficult to read. And it's very important that you use black fonts. Both of these features, the black font and the font size and style, they also help recruiters scan your resumes. So when we're out at universities and career fairs and we're taking resumes, we actually come back and scan them and upload them so that we can send them out to principals. If you're using different colors and fonts that have lots of curls and everything to them as a cursive does, it can make it very difficult to create a legible scan. If you're fighting for space in your resume, you can reduce the spacing between sections to 8-point font. So again, make sure you're including your professional email and a professional voicemail on the phone number that's included in your resume. If you decide to include a link to your online portfolio, that is wonderful, but it is optional. It's something that we see candidates coming out of university, like recent grads. It's more common among recent grads. You can include a link to your portfolio, which can contain sample lesson plans, videos, sample of student work. Just make sure that you're redacting student names for their privacy. And then for pictures are not really necessary. They're not a necessary part of your resume. You want to make sure you're reserving the space on your resume for content. The principals want to know, again, what you've done and how you've impacted students. And so a picture, while nice, it doesn't really convey what you've done, right? So make sure that you save that space for your work history and your accomplishments. Okay, so just circling back, now that I've gone through the different sections of the resume, I hope this resume makes sense. Again, contact information and education are generally at the top, followed by work experience. If you don't prefer this template, there are many templates that you can just Google and mimic, or you can create your own. But the key point is to make it very clean and polished. All right, so I'd like to touch on references. If you notice, I did not discuss this as a section on the resume. This is because we do not include a reference section on the resume. But I want you to go ahead and secure at least 3 positive references, because as a principal, we do contact references. So you want to make sure that you are listing a current or previous supervisor. I know it can sometimes be intimidating to talk to your principal and say, hey, I'm thinking about changing paths, or, I'm moving and I'm going to be looking for a new position. I know those can be difficult conversations that you have. However, as a principal, when I see that somebody has included their current principal or supervisor on their resume, that's actually showing me that you're pretty transparent and you have an open relationship with your supervisor. And that speaks volumes, because as a principal, I need to know what's going on with my teachers so I know how to best serve them and help them when they're serving in my school. So again, they're not on the resume, but you will provide the references when they are requested. And so there is no need for you to include the line references available upon request. There's no need for that, because again, it's just a way to take up space, and you need to save that space for your valuable content. All right, so I guess before we move on to the cover letters, I could take some questions about the resume. Okay, if you don't have any questions at this time, that's okay. You can go ahead and put them in the chat if that's easier, and I can circle back to them at the end. All right, so we will move on to discuss the cover letter. All right, so cover letters generally follow a very standard business letter format. So you will see, I will show you an example of a cover letter, but you can see it's very structured in terms of the content and also the format. So you're going to open with a greeting. So it can be, Dear HISD Selection Team, Dear Principal Smith, Dear Mr. Johnson, whatever you see is appropriate, and after your school research, so that way you know how to address the campus. Your opening paragraph is going to clearly state the position for which you are applying. Your second paragraph is going to talk about how you meet the school's needs. And in closing, you are going to ask for follow-up. Ideally, you're going to ask for an interview. So I'm going to take you through these components. Okay, so this one opens up just standard Dear Madam or Sir. That's fine. Again, you can tailor it to what you see as appropriate. In the first section, the first paragraph is going to be very short. So you can say, Dear Principal of Content Elementary, I am writing to express my interest in your role as a bilingual teacher at Content Elementary as advertised on the HISD website. So if you're specific in describing which role, which teaching position you're interested in applying for, it makes the principal, or it tells the principal very clearly why you're contacting them and what role you're seeking to discuss. The second paragraph is going to highlight your skill set, so you can touch on your experience and your accomplishments and how you meet the needs of the campus. Okay, so you don't want to regurgitate your resume. This is a supplement to your resume. This is the opportunity for you to show that you've learned about the school and that you are going to be able to meet the needs of the campus. And then again, in your closing paragraph, you're going to demonstrate your heartfelt commitment to teaching, right? So you want to express your enthusiasm. And I'll talk about that when we get to the interview as well. And then you want to outright ask for an interview or indirectly ask for an interview. And I'm going to show you an example here. So here's an example of a standard cover letter. Again, you can see it's very clean. It's very polished. The spacing is symmetrical. And we have the standard greeting, Dear Ms. Beasley. And then we have right at the beginning, I'm writing to apply for the hotel manager position. So very upfront, this is why I'm contacting you. This is the position in which I'm interested in. In the next two paragraphs, this person highlights what they've learned from their previous work and why they're interested in the new job. And then in the final paragraph, they offer an indirect request for follow-up communication. And so you can say, I typically say, I would appreciate the opportunity to interview with you at your convenience, but you can phrase it any way that it seems fit for you. All right, so how do you connect your skill set to the campus? So you need to know the school. This is going to require you to do some research. You want to make sure that you're highlighting what you can bring to the table and how it matches the needs of the campus. And so some of the things that you can research include the campus size, the demographics, the data, the specialty programs. And so let's say that the campus is a dual language campus. And excuse me. Let's say that the campus is a dual language campus and you are obviously a bilingual teacher or an ESL teacher. That's going to fit right into campus needs from the get-go. And then you have experience in working in another country. That's going to bring that cultural component because that's something that dual language campuses also celebrate, is the cultural heritage of their students and of other cultures so that they can learn more and really assimilate while they're learning the language. Here is an example of our school webpage. This is for Content Elementary. And so every campus in our district has a website. This is a great starting place for you to go when you are learning about the school to which you are applying. So you can Google the school name and see if they have a website. If you're applying to HISD, you will certainly find one. It always includes the staff information so you can get to know the leadership team. So that way when you're preparing for the interview, you can address the panel by name. You can dig through their website to find data, probably pictures of different events and things like that. You want to focus on not only the academic components, but also the extracurricular components and community service that the school provides. All right, so let's take a look at how we can match up school needs with the candidate attributes. So this school has, from reading the website, this candidate gleans that the school adopted a reading recovery program. They have a large bilingual population. They collaborate with a local art museum, and they use a specialized literacy program. As the candidate has a 3.75 GPA. The candidate is trained in reading recovery, also fluent in Spanish, and the candidate attended courses about art history in elementary schools. So how can we mesh the school needs with the candidate attributes and experience? Well, the school uses reading recovery and the teacher is already trained in reading recovery, so that's a perfect match. There's a bilingual population at the school and the teacher speaks Spanish, so that's also a perfect match. And then working with the art museum, the teacher has attended courses, and so they have some learning, they have some knowledge about art history in elementary schools, and so they can discuss that in their cover letter. In your cover letter, just like on your resume, you are able to provide a link to your teacher portfolio. It is optional, again, not necessary, but you can provide the hiring managers or principals with a lot more information than you can in a short one-page cover letter. And so in your portfolio, some of the things that you might want to include is another copy of your resume, your lesson plans, examples of projects, student work examples, parent communication, etc. Again, remember to redact any personal identifiable information from your students. And then you can also list your professional information, such as your professional activities, your awards and achievements, etc. Keep in mind that principals and leadership teams, as well as recruiters, have a limited time to scan resumes, read cover letters, and select candidates for the interview process. It's not that we don't take time. We do. We spend a lot of time doing this, but we have a lot of applicants. And so for that reason, the resume is so structured and the cover letter is so structured so that it makes it easy for easy reading. You don't want to overwhelm the principal or hiring manager with too much information because they just won't be able to get through it. It's not that they don't want to. We would love to be able to see all of your student work examples. We just have a limited amount of time to select the best candidates that we are going to interview for our schools. All right, so we can pause there if we have any questions about the cover letter. Okay, see that we have a couple questions for the end, and that's okay. So we'll go ahead and move on to the interview. All right, so the interview can take place in a variety of formats. And so it can be one-on-one. These days, a lot of interviews are remote. They can take place in a group, meaning that you are meeting with a panel from the school. So when I was a principal, I always included the teaching team, so the PLC or the professional learning community in the interview process, because I wanted to make sure that the candidate we selected to join the team not only was the best fit as far as content and other things that they were going to be able to bring to the school, but also the best fit for collaboration with the team. Your interview, your first or subsequent interview, may also include a sample teach or a sample lesson. The principal may ask you to develop a 5 to 10 5 to 10 minute short lesson, so that way they can get better insight into your lesson teaching style, the materials that you use, how you would differentiate, etc. This could take place with a group of students that are in the school already, but it could also just be the panel and the panel serving as a student. So you would just need to prepare your lesson, a condensed lesson, so that way the leadership team or the PLC team can really see your teaching style. All right, so the impressions of you. First impressions are so important during the interview. So research shows that first impressions are created within 1/10 of a second to the first 7 seconds. So really, when you are meeting somebody, whether it be at a job fair or walking into the campus or even parking your car in the parking lot, people are observing and people are forming impressions of you. Research also shows that it takes about 8 subsequent positive encounters to overcome someone's negative perception of you. So it's really important to put your best foot forward when you are preparing for the interview, not only when you get into the room with the panel or with the principal, but from the moment that you drive on that street where the school is located, because people are always observing. All right, so your ultimate interview would be your first day of school with the kiddos. But before you make it to that step, you need to pass the interview with the leadership team and the hiring manager. So let's talk more in detail. I go back to know the school. During the interview, you want to show that you have done your research, that you know the campus, that you've taken time to learn about the campus culture, its accomplishments, and also the school needs. So you want to prepare thoughtful and campus-specific questions. So at the close of every interview, the person or the interviewer typically asks, "Do you have any questions for me or for us?" Say, "Yes, I do," and have some thoughtful questions prepared, very campus-specific questions. So here's some tips on preparing for your interview. You want to make sure that you know yourself. You want to engage in reflection. You want to be able to present your skills, your talents, your successes, your accomplishments in both academic and work, and even in your life experiences. And so I'm going to show you some examples of questions that touch on all of these areas. As you're thinking, as you're preparing, make sure that you're preparing specific examples. It's not that, oh, yes, I work well with others. You're going to want to hear a specific time, a specific example of when you worked well with others. And I'll go into detail with that in a few minutes. Again, think about how you can connect your abilities and your beliefs to the school's missions and initiatives. This doesn't mean that you have to recite the school mission during your interview. That's not the point of this. But you want to know what their mission is. What does the school stand for? What are their values? Do they value diversity, trust, integrity, collaboration? What are their values, and how will you exemplify those values as you serve as a teacher at that campus? So we have identified some reflection questions for you in different areas. So if you think about yourself and you think about yourself as a teacher, think about your commitment to student-centered instruction. The principal is going to probably ask you some information about your content knowledge and how you present the content so that students are engaging. As a principal, I was looking for teachers who would tell me about their student-centered learning activities. Yes, as an instructor, we do give our mini lessons where we're doing the primary talking, but I was looking for teachers who created hands-on activities to really get the students involved and who also offered leadership opportunities for the students throughout the lesson. So think about your lesson style or your teaching style. Think about the lessons. Are you reflective and adaptive? Are you flexible? Is that something? How do you collect your data so that you can revise your lesson plans as needed for the next day based on student performance, based on student understanding? Also, think about your social emotional approach. And so for my campus, we were looking for teachers who were committed to restorative discipline and meeting students where they are, not only at the academic level, but socially and emotionally. So in Houston, our community has been hit pretty hard. The world went through COVID-19 pandemic. We're still in it, right? But our community has also been hit by several hurricanes or in nearby states. We had a great influx from New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And so we have to be sensitive to the students' needs and make sure that we're meeting them where they are. So the other sections that I want you to think about and reflect upon are the specific skills and experiences that you're going to bring to the table. What value are you going to add to the campus? How are you going to make the campus a better place for students and the community? Think about your greatest strengths. What can you bring that's unique to the school? Also, think about your greatest opportunity for growth. So we always say we're lifelong learners, right? What does that actually mean? The principal might ask you, tell me about your greatest opportunity for growth and how you plan to improve upon that as a teacher on my campus. So if you're not that skilled at using Excel or some data tracking systems, think about what you have done so far to learn as much as you can about it and how you've been successful in data tracking up to this point and what you're going to do to become even better. So we have to be vulnerable when we're reflecting and preparing for these interviews and take ownership of what we know and what we don't know, but how are we going to become better in our jobs? The final section that I want you to reflect upon is your work ethic and your professionalism. So do you possess a collaborative mindset? Are you a teacher who's going to bring a lot of drama to the campus? Or are you going to be a teacher who is looking for collaboration and harmony among, your colleagues and students? So it doesn't have to be all flowers and rainbows, right? We certainly engage in different disagreement and differing opinions. And actually, I often ask candidates about that. Tell me about a time you had a differing of opinion or a disagreement with a colleague. And so I can learn about how people approach compromise and understanding and valuing perspectives from their colleagues and students and parents. Okay, so let's talk about the day of the interview. On the day of the interview, you want to make sure that you arrive early. I think 15 minutes is a pretty good mark to arrive early. You could go 30 minutes if you want to feel secure that you're in your location on time. If you have not been to the campus before and you're not sure about its location, take a couple of days before and drive that commute. So that way you're not nervous about trying to find the route and getting to the right location. Make sure that you eat something before you go. So, nourishment helps us think better so that we'll be able to better respond to the interview questions. But you also don't want your tummy growling during the interview because that's going to be distracting for you and for the interviewer. Remember about creating the first impression. This starts from your attire, to your greeting, to your enthusiasm, and to your presence. And then always be friendly and polite. So we always want to come off with a positive attitude, whether it be from the crossing guard who waves us through or the front desk clerk to the interview panel. We always want to make sure that we're respectful to everyone in the school and the community. All right, so here are the essential 7 things to think about when you are preparing for your interview. So starting with clothing and attire, because again, creating the first impression, that's what people see. They see what we're wearing. They see how we've dressed for the occasion. You don't necessarily have to wear a suit, but you want to make sure that you keep it professional. Nervousness. This is very common. If you're applying for a position that you really, really want, of course you're going to be nervous, right? Because you're going to be disappointed if you don't get the job. But if you practice in advance and you go through these reflection questions and think about your examples and think about your responses, that will help you tame your nerves. You can also do some breathing exercises. If you get to the interview a little bit early and you just sit in your car and take yourself through some meditation or maybe just scroll social media or something just to kind of bring down that nervousness so that you're really prepared to walk in as a confident teacher when you enter the interview. So important is your enthusiasm. Make sure that you convey your enthusiasm. I interviewed a teacher. She was a graduate from a local university, and I was looking for a 5th grade science teacher. And 5th grade science is actually a pretty difficult course to teach because we have a state exam in that particular grade and content area. But this teacher, her enthusiasm just knocked my team and I off our chairs because she was so excited and it was so genuine. She had such a love for the content area and for students that we hired her on the spot. And actually, it was a really good decision because she ended up becoming a finalist for the best science teacher in Houston during her first year of teaching. So enthusiasm really goes a long way. Make sure it's genuine. Body language. Pay attention to your body language. So arms crossed generally signals that we're a little bit closed off. Tapping on the desk can be distracting. And so you want to make sure that you're aware of, what you are doing and how you're conveying yourself. Adornment. This kind of goes hand in hand with attire. Think about the things that you're wearing. If you have a charm bracelet and it's hitting the desk every time you speak or every time you move your hand, rather, that can be very distracting for the interviewer. And so you want to make sure that you're not wearing anything that's going to be considered distracting. Eye contact. Make sure that you are giving eye contact. It is a sign of confidence. And so I know virtually, depending where your camera is, sometimes our eyes can look a little wonky, but in person, you want to make sure that you're giving that direct eye contact and also to the panel. So if you're interviewing with several people, you can look around the room at each person and give eye contact as equitably as possible. Finally, your voice. Practice your responses out loud. You want your voice to sound confident. You want to make sure that your volume is appropriate. And so I have interviewed teachers who have spoken so softly, and really, I think it was just out of nervousness, but they spoke so softly that I was concerned that they wouldn't be able to project to a class of students because right you give deliver those mini lessons and you need to be able to project the content to the students so that they can hear clearly. So I want you to practice. You can even record yourself and play it back so that you can give yourself tips on your voice level. All right, so getting down to the interview questions. Interview questions for teachers, these typically span these areas. So content knowledge. If you're applying for a math job or science job, bilingual education, the principal will likely ask you about your content knowledge of those areas. Classroom management and discipline management. Again, remember we talked about, as a principal, I was looking for restorative discipline approaches. Different leadership teams, different schools have different needs. It's not a one size fits all, and so you have to figure out what's your approach to classroom management and discipline, and you're going to have to determine whether or not you're best fit for that school, and the principal is going to be doing the same through his or her interview questions with you. What are some of your best practices? What's your social emotional approach? Again, looking at your strengths, your skills, and also your opportunities for growth. You think about your collaboration with your teams and your professional learning communities or PLCs. Reflect on your communication with parents in the community. Also reflect on your mindset and think about behavior. So when we talk about behavior as teachers, we always think about student behavior, right? But principals want to know about your behavior as well. And so that's what I wanted to take you through in the next slides here. So as far as behavioral interviewing is becoming increasingly popular, and many interviewers are looking for candidates to use the STAR approach when responding to these types of questions. So if you haven't heard of the STAR approach before, I'm going to take you through it now. So the S stands for situation. So remember on an early slide, I asked you to think about concrete examples. What was the situation? What was your task? What was your action? What was your result? The situation, provide an overview of the circumstances. So were you teaching your class? Were you outside at recess? Were you on a field trip? Brief overview of the situation. What was your task? What was going on and what was your objective? What did you need to accomplish in that situation? Your action. What action steps did you take to address the situation? And then what was the result? Remember in our bullet points in our resume, we're providing the outcomes. When we talk about our experiences and we're giving our examples, we most definitely want to be able to provide the outcomes. So here's some examples of questions that are going to probe for your specific examples. These are behavioral interview questions. Tell me about a time a student demonstrated disruptive behavior during your lesson. So as a principal, when I use this question, I'm looking for a specific example. It's actually a loaded question because, one, I'm trying to figure out what you as a teacher consider disruptive. And does that match our discipline policy on my campus? And then I'm also curious to know how you handled the situation. So you might say, there was a time when my third grade students were taking their practice state exam. It was a practice, so it was mid-March, and the exam is in early May. So it was very important that they had a calm testing environment. I had a student with test anxiety, and the students started to go into panic mode. The students started ripping up their test, and so I knew I needed to take action to, again, preserve that calm environment. Maybe you would say, in another situation, I would be able to handle this by myself, but given it was such a high stakes period, I did call for assistance, not with that specific student, but with the group of students so that I could address the student. So I called the office to have a clerk come and manage my class so I could escort the student outside and I could talk with the student and help him or her implement his coping strategies so he could calm down, take a water break. We walked to the water fountain. and he was ready to go. And for what was the outcome, he was able to actually finish the test. I gave him a new test booklet so that he could finish off. I could salvage the questions that he had already completed, and he actually did 10 points better than he did on his previous practice a couple months prior. So you see, I'm giving the situation. My task was to calm down the student. I'm telling what my action steps were and what was the outcome. So some other examples of interview questions that are really focusing on your behavior as a teacher would be the following. Give me an example of a time you collaborated with a team. The principal wants to know, are you willing to share your resources? Are you willing to compromise? Do you plan together? Tell them something specific. It could be about designing the science fair. It could be about creating a cross-curricular project. Whatever experience you have. Another example, tell me about a time a parent or guardian approached you about a concern regarding something that happened with their child in your classroom. So again, as a principal, I'm looking for, do you value concerns when the parents bring them to you? How do you approach the parent, or how do you attempt to resolve the situation? Next question, provide an example of a professional or personal goal and explain how you accomplished it. So again, this can go back to not only your work, but your personal interests and your accomplishments. And so that way you can highlight your unique skill set. So that way you can get an edge over other candidates who are applying for the same position. After the interview, make sure you follow up. You want to send a thank you email within 24 hours. You want to reiterate your interest in the position and your reflection on the conversation. If there was anything that you missed, again, not pages worth, but maybe a sentence or two worth, if you left the interview and you said, oh, I forgot to tell them this is a good opportunity to go ahead and plug that in your thank you email to the principal and team. All right, so finally, I would just like to touch on the career fair because this might be your first interview. So in your career fair, you also want to think about your attire. You want to dress professionally. Again, it doesn't have to be a suit, but you want to be professional. Take several resumes, not only paper resumes, but also a digital resume would be very helpful. In HISD, we use a QR code for teachers who have that available. They can use a QR code and upload their soft copy automatically into our system. Make sure that you have a friendly greeting. Remember to smile and create an elevator pitch. So 30-second blurb about yourself. What are you looking for? What's your experience? And how you're going to serve the district or school. Be prepared to interview on the spot. I have actually hired teachers directly from a career fair or job fair. And so ensure that you are ready to interview. And then again, follow up. Take a business card or get the email information and send that follow-up email just like you would do after a traditional interview. All right, so that ends our presentation, but I think there are a couple of questions.
That was great, Lisa. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was super informative. Yeah, I've collated a couple of the questions from the community. And one of them that I'd like to ask first is for those ESL teachers that are looking to move into something a little bit more formal at an employer like Houston ISD. Can you comment on some of the job opportunities that might be available to them that, as they're working on their state certifications, but for, a candidate that might have technical certifications and might be looking to transition and work on their state level certifications and maybe, some of the job opportunities, and that might help them both, look for opportunities at HSID, but also when they're searching other district websites.
Absolutely. So our philosophy is all hands on deck. If you love working with students, we can find a position for you, especially given that our population, we have so many English language learners in our district. We really are looking for instructors who are skilled in providing ESL services. So if you do not have your state level certification yet, we have lots of job opportunities. We have tutors, we have the academic tutors is going to be your best way to go. We don't have so many. I saw somebody have a question about online instructors. There is a program through a third party that we're doing some online instructing, but for our specific district, you could come in as a tutor, you could come in as a substitute. In Texas, when you get enrolled in an alternative certification program, which is actually what I did, because remember, my majors were finance and Spanish, I just had to pass my content exams, and then I could work as a first year teacher while I was getting certified. So you don't have to go necessarily back to your university to complete your whole degree prior to getting in the classroom. There are avenues to get you connected with students while you're working on becoming a fully certified teacher.
That is really great to know. It's really great to know that there's that level of flexibility baked into these opportunities. I think for a lot of folks that are, teaching online, that have, varied experience in other countries, that have been out of the States for a while, I think some of us forget that there is that flexibility for joining for looking for classroom opportunities. So that's
Mhm.
great to know. Um, I imagine that the Houston area has seen a influx of recent newcomer students over the last couple of years. Similar to a lot of different parts of the states. Can you comment on what that has meant for your hiring practices and what that's meant for kind of job opportunities within the district?
Absolutely. So, yes, we have seen quite an influx. And so, we have a large bilingual population. We have increased our number of dual language campuses. And not only do we offer Spanish dual language, we have French immersion and Arabic immersion and Mandarin immersion as well. And so, we really are a global district in a global city. And we are looking for teachers who have experience with diversity. We are looking to hire teachers from other countries. We are working right now with the teacher exchange programs to bring experienced teachers from overseas to HISD, because we're looking for teachers, again, with not only that language, but who can help students assimilate into Houston. And so,
Awesome.
yeah, we have, if you are certified as a teacher or working on that certification, you could certainly reach out to us and we can help you go through that transition process.
That's awesome. And I've got a question on acronyms. So in every field, there's lots of acronyms, but particularly in teaching. So when it comes to ELL, EL, L, MLL, bilingual educator. What do you recommend for teachers when they're adapting their resume? Do you think they should adapt their resume per each district's kind of choice of acronyms and verbiage?
I think if you want to take the approach to spell out the acronym and then put the acronym in parentheses, that will ensure that the principal will understand the area that you're certified in. And so, as a recruiter, I was talking with a teacher from California for special education, and he used an acronym, and I was like, what is that? And so, just really, he told me, he explained it. And so it made sense. But if you just go ahead and spell it out and then include the acronym next to it, then that way I think it'll be a win win for both you and the principal.
That's awesome. And the final question was from one of our members of our online community. They were asking vis-a-vis the portfolio, the teacher portfolio.
Mhm.
They have a lot of recordings of themselves doing live, synchronous, conversation-based approach lessons, and many of those are with adult students. Those over 18, so some of those privacy issues aren't as apparent. And they have approval to use some, clippings from those videos as part of their portfolio. Do you think that would be appropriate for a teacher portfolio?
I think if you have experience in working with adults, that's very valid, right? And so that falls under education. Just because it's not with a population of pre-K through 12 doesn't mean that your adult teaching experience isn't relevant. Remember where I talked about taking any experience you have and making it relevant to the job that you're looking for. And so I think it is okay for you to use those videos, again, just with the permission and as long as the privacy is okay. But what you can do is explain to the principal, I have experience with adults. This is what I've learned, so that way I know how to teach children, and this is how I'm going to go about it.
Awesome. So those are all the questions we have, and I would just, on behalf of Off the Class, on behalf of our large ESL teacher community that are looking for positions, we just want to really thank you. That was a super informative and practical session. Thank you so much, Lisa.
You're welcome. My pleasure.